राधर श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप कविनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरी गोवर्धन की, वृंदावन धाम की, मथुरा धाम की, गंगा माई की, यमुना माई की, तुलसी देवी की, भक्ति देवी की, समवेत भक्तवृंद की. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so reading from chapter 6, text number 32. Atmaupamyena sarvatra samang pashyati yo arjuna sukham va yadi va dukham sa yogi paramo mataha. Atmaupamyena sarvatra samam pashyati arjuna sukham va yadi va dukham sayogi paramo mataha. Atmaupamyena sarvatra samam pashyati arjuna sukham va yadi va dukham sayogi paramo mataha. Atmaupamyena sarvatra samam pashyati arjuna sukham va yadi va dukham sayogi paramo mataha. Please repeat.
Atmaupamyena sarvatra samam pashyati arjuna sukham va yadi va dukham sayogi paramo mataha. Atmaupamyena sarvatra samam pashyati arjuna sukham va yadi va dukham sayogi paramo mataha. Atmaupamyena sarvatra samam pashyati arjuna sukham va yadi va dukham sayogi paramo mataha. Atmaupamyena sarvatra samam pashyati arjuna sukham va yadi va dukham sayogi paramo mataha. Atmaupamyena sarvatra samam pashyati arjuna sukham va yadi va dukham sayogi paramo mataha. Atmaupamyena sarvatra samam pashyati arjuna sukham va yadi va dukham sayogi paramo mataha.
Mataji's.
Atmaupamyena sarvatra samam pashyati arjuna sukham va yadi va dukham
Anyone else? Okay. Atma, with his self. Aupamyena, by comparison. Sarvatra, everywhere. Samam, equally. Pashyati, sees. Yah, he who. Arjuna, O Arjuna. Sukham, happiness. Va, or. Yadi, if. Va, or. Dukham, distress. Saha, such. Yogi, a transcendentalist. Paramaha, perfect. Mataha is considered. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. He is a perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self, sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and their distress. O Arjuna. Purport. One who is Krishna conscious is a perfect yogi. He is aware of everyone's happiness and distress by the dint of his own personal experience. The cause of the distress of a living entity is forgetfulness of his relationship with God. And the cause of happiness is knowing Krishna to be the supreme enjoyer of all the activities of human being, the proprietor of all lands and planets, and the sincerest friend of all living entities. The perfect yogi knows that the living being who is conditioned by the modes of material nature is subject to the threefold material miseries due to forgetfulness of his relationship with Krishna. And because one in Krishna consciousness is happy, he tries to distribute the knowledge of Krishna everywhere. Since the perfect yogi tries to broadcast the importance of becoming Krishna conscious, he is the best philanthropist in the world and is the dearest servitor of the Lord. Nachat tasman manusyeshu kaschin me priya kritamaha. In other words, a devotee of the Lord always looks to the welfare of all living entities, and in this way he is factually the friend of everyone. He is the best yogi because he does not desire perfection in yoga for his personal benefit, but tries for others also. He does not envy his fellow living entities. Here is a contrast between a pure devotee of the Lord and a yogi interested only in his personal elevation. The yogi who has withdrawn to a secluded place in order to meditate perfectly may not be as perfect as a devotee who is trying his best to turn every man towards Krishna consciousness. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuramitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapita Mena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Sapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shetapadakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Shri Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vijakhan Vitam Shahe Krishna Karina Sindhutina Vanda Jakavade Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hrive Vanchakalpatarivascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swami Nityanaya Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanaya Namaste Sarasvate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, Jnanand Maham Deva Nirashvadikakritam Adharam Sarva Vidyanam Hayagrivam Upasmahi. So, here we're continuing with the 6th chapter of the descriptions of Dhyana Yoga, or the science of Dhyana Yoga is being described. But Krishna here starts to speak about the perfection. He speaks about the yogi, he performs these process of Ashtanga Yoga and comes to that perfection. But then higher than that, here Krishna speaks about a yogi who's absolutely perfect. And so, there's a few verses that come in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita like that yogi nam api sarvesham, those one who is always meditating upon me, he's the topmost of yogi. That is my opinion, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. And so here, one who is Krishna conscious is a perfect yogi. He is aware of everyone's happiness and distress by the dint of his own personal experience. So the Krishna conscious person understands this world inside out. He understands the nature of life in terms of the three modes of material nature. What is suffering? What is happiness? What is material happiness? What is spiritual happiness? He understands all of these things very clearly. Now, in the material world, distress is obviously, nobody desires distress, but it comes about. But for another person to see another person distressful actually gives people joy. You know that it's a very disgusting part of the material world. It's very cunning. People are like that. That when they feel a little bit of suffering in their life, if you go somewhere else where other people are suffering more, then you feel better about yourself. This I saw even earlier. My own teachers. Like we're talking about yogis, and in the Bhagavad Gita we're talking about approaching a teacher. I've said this a few times, but my teacher openly told us that when I feel sad, I go to my friend's house, because when I go to my friend's house, I see her life is worse than mine, and I feel better about myself. Right? Yeah. That's how it is. That's how the material world is. People judge their level of happiness on the standard of other people's distress. Oh, his life is so terrible. At least my life is not like that. When you go by the Atlanta, you're having a terrible day. You can always look out of the window and look at the homeless guy living under the bridge and go, at least I have a home to live in. You can always find solace in some sort of, oh, at least I have this. The homeless guy can say, at least I have a bridge to live under. That guy over there just sleeps on the floor, out in the open. And then that person out on the street, at least that at least people are coming and feeding me. Some person over there is starving to death. Or some other homeless guy has a disease. So it goes on and on and on. And actually none of them endeavor to understand each other's distress or try to mitigate each other's distress. Everybody's looking to mitigate their own distress at the expense of others. If you've seen this, if you ever go hand out food to the homeless people, they're ruthless. They don't care about the distress of the others. If their others are hungry, no, let me get mine. I'll take $2-3, is no problem. So in this material world, one is not aware of others' happiness and others' distress, and one does not desire the ultimate welfare of others. Just like even within our friendship, even within our so-called friendships of this material world, we've seen that if we start to do better, others become envious of our, progress in life. All of a sudden, it's like, you did, even in school, right? When you're doing your tests, this is like the closest that I ever experienced that. You're doing a test and you studied together, you did everything together, but your friend does like way better. And then you like flunk it, and you're sitting there like, bro, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me what you studied? Why didn't you do I would have done the same thing as you, would have done good together. So it becomes like, man, this guy, man, he cheated me. Actually, the dude just worked harder than you. He probably stayed up at night and studied. Or if you fail together, then you can what is that saying? Misery loves company. You can sit together and cry about it, and it feels good. But a devotee is not like that. A devotee is not like that. Just like in the Bhagavad Gita, that the super soul Krishna is the friend of all living entities. Similarly, the sadhu, the devotees, are also friend of all living entities. Why? Because they do not see each other as a competition within this material world. They see the other living entity as a spirit soul. What is this verse that comes? No, not this one. That the sage sees Brahmana, the Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmani Gavi Hastine Sunichaiva Sapakecha Panditat Samadarshinaha. That the sage, he sees the dog, he sees the Brahmana, he sees the dog eater, the elephant. He sees them all as equal because he ultimately sees the soul within. He does not see the bodily aspect. So a perfect yogi, he's aware of everyone's happiness and distresses. Now, he's aware of everyone's happiness also means that he's aware that this happiness of this material world is also flickering. So actually for them there is no real happiness. And distress is, yes, everybody's going under distress. Birth, death, old age and disease. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 15th chapter that the living entities, they're struggling very hard with the six senses, including the mind. They're, as Prabhupada says here, they're battling the modes of material nature. Passion and ignorance and goodness is constantly pulling the living entity. And in the three sufferings, the sufferings from the body, suffering from the mind, suffering from nature. Sorry, from body and mind, that's Atma, that's oneself. And then from others, and then from nature. These three things are always inflicting pain upon the living entity. Actually, the living entity is always trapped under the modes of material nature. It is never free. The home, what is it? The free, what is this? America, what did they say? Land of the free and the home of the brave, right? Land of the free and the home of the brave. But actually no one is free. Everybody's trapped by their own minds. They're trapped by the modes of material nature. They're controlled. This is not real freedom. Freedom, the idea of freedom is that you can walk into a bar and smoke and drink and have sex with women. That is their freedom. That you can do that on the weekends. That is the top. That's what freedom is, right? America means guns, beer, and trucks, and meat. That's your freedom. But actually, this is being controlled. If you analyze, actually, you're controlled by all these things. You cannot go without these things. These things bring about so-called happiness. But actually more than that, so-called happiness is bringing the living entity great level of distress. Why? Because it is taking the living entity away from Krishna. One is becoming more and more conditioned by material nature. One is becoming more and more trapped, just like the Srimad Bhagavatam gives the example of a silkworm that traps itself in a cocoon. Just like one builds a net around himself and then he cannot get out. So the living entities, they are creating their own suffering by their desire to enjoy separately from God. Naturally, the living entity is godly. That's its original nature. It is that it has these godly qualities. But when one is conditioned, when one is under false ego, under the bodily conception of life, then he tries to endeavor for his own happiness, separate happiness. Just like if you cut there's this tree out there. If you cut the branch off and let the branch enjoy the water that comes from the sky and let it become nourished by that water, cut the branch off. No, it will die. It will not enjoy. It will die. But if it stays on the tree, it will stay nourished. So this suffering of the living entity is inflicted upon, the nature of the conditioned soul is to blame it on everyone else, right? When we suffer, it's somebody else's fault. Either the person or the time or circumstance or nature, we always blame it on others. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, this nature, this suffering is described by this Avanti Brahmana. So he begins this with saying, persons who identify with this body, which is simply the product of the material mind, are blinded in their intelligence, thinking in terms of I and mine. Because of the illusion, this is I, but that is someone else, they wander in endless darkness. If you say that these people are the cause of my happiness and distress, then where is the place of the soul in such a conception? This happiness and distress pertain not to the soul, but to the interactions of the material body. If someone bites his tongue with his own teeth, at whom can he become angry in his suffering? If you say that the demigods who rule the bodily senses cause suffering, still, how can such suffering apply to the spirit soul? This acting and being acted upon are merely interaction of changeable senses and their presiding deities. When one limb of the body attacks another, with whom can the person in that body be angry? If the soul himself were the cause of happiness and distress, then we would not blame others, since happiness and distress would be simply the nature of the soul. According to this theory, nothing except the soul exists, and if we were to perceive something besides the soul, that would be illusion. Therefore, since happiness and distress do not actually exist in this concept, why become angry at oneself or others? So, a devotee understands that actually this he goes on, if we examine the hypothesis that the planets are the immediate cause of suffering and happiness, then also where is the relationship with the soul who is eternal? After all, the effects of the planet applies only to things that have taken birth. Expert astrologers have moreover explained how the planets are only causing pain to each other. Therefore, since the living entity is distinct from these planets and from the material body, against whom should he vent his anger? If we assume that the fruitive work is the cause of happiness distress, we are still not dealing with the soul. The idea of material work arises when there is a spiritual actor who is conscious and material body that undergoes the transformation of happiness and distress as a reaction to such work. Since the body has no life, it cannot be actual recipient of happiness and distress, nor can the soul, who is ultimately completely spiritual and aloof from the material body. Since karma thus has no ultimate basis in either the body or the soul, at whom can one become angry? Anyways, he goes on and on. So the living entity, the devotee understands that ultimately here, that is just as it was described. If one hand attacks another, or if the mouth bites the tongue, who can one blame? Who is ultimate to blame? Well, it is us ourselves. We are the cause of our happiness and distress throughout our journey of this material existence. Now, the soul has nothing to do with this ultimately. Soul is taking that position, but ultimately the happiness and distresses of this world do not apply to the spirit soul. Therefore, the devotee who is a perfect yogi is situated above this and can see this with equal vision. Therefore he's not disturbed by happiness and distress. He's not disturbed by winter or summer. He's not disturbed by spring or autumn. He's completely equipoised because he understands that we are the causes of our happiness and distress due to our taking on this material body, but ultimately, on the spiritual platform, we do not undergo these material happiness and distresses. They're external to the body. So he understands these perfectly, the perfect yogi. And so he knows that the cause of happiness is knowing Krishna to be the supreme enjoyer of all the activities of human being, the proprietor of all lands and planets, and the sincerest friend of all living entities. Perfect yogi knows that the living being who is conditioned by modes of material nature is subjected to the threefold miseries due to forgetfulness of his relationship with Krishna. And because one in Krishna consciousness is happy, he tries to distribute the knowledge of Krishna everywhere. So the cause of happiness is knowing Krishna to be the supreme enjoyer. This is a verse that comes in the 7:14. Is that right? Bhaktaram Yagatapasam. 5:26? Yeah, must be, sorry. 29. 5:29. Bhaktaram Yagatapasam. 5:29. Here we go. Bhaktaram Yagatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Shrid Sarvabhutanam Gyatvam Shantim Richati. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and will-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the fangs of material miseries. So until one can identify himself as the servant of Krishna, as Krishna becoming, as God being the supreme, the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and will-wishers of all living entities, he cannot have peace. That he is the He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the owner of everything. He is the source of everything. Otherwise, one simply, as Prabhupada often gives the example, that he remains in his situation as a thief. And a thief can never be happy. He's always anxious about when he will become caught, when he will have to undergo the punishment for the crime that he has performed. And the worst type of suffering is that crime you've performed, you don't even know that you're doing the crime. So then you go do the time and you're like, why am I here? So the living entities, we're forgetful, and we have not understood that our original position is to serve Krishna, is to be in that loving relationship with Krishna, and to recognize Krishna in all these aspects. We don't understand that. We're constantly stealing and trying to lord over that energy which does not belong to us. And then we're suffering, we're doing the time, we're imprisoned and inflicted by the fangs of we're thrown into this material world. We're in this material world and experience the material miseries, and we're wondering why. Everybody's wondering, oh, why me? Everyone, right? That's why me? Why not someone else? Why not that guy? Why me? Why do I have to go through this? Anytime anybody goes through something hard, you look around us and you go, why me? Well, you did it to yourself. But because we are forgetful, just like we don't even remember what we ate a week ago. So the amount of crimes we've done, not just within this lifetime, but also lifetime after lifetime, is unlimited. And you cannot blame it on the, because the stars, whatever, if you're into astrology, because the stars are situated like this, therefore I'm suffering, or because I am Vata, Kapha, what's the other one? Pitta, therefore I'm of this nature, therefore that's why I'm acting like this. So many other things. This person did this to me, therefore I'm acting like this. The weather is like this, therefore I'm acting like this. These are all excuses. Ultimately, one should take responsibility for his position and be ready to raise himself up onto the platform of spiritual existence. So the devotee understands these things very very clearly. And so the perfect yogi knows the living beings who is conditioned by the modes of material nature is subjected to threefold miseries due to forgetfulness of his relationship with Krishna. And the living entities are so foolish to think that they can find their own way, a better way out of this material world. When there is perfect knowledge already given to the living entity through the Bhagavad Gita, which try to speculate, just like these people that are out on the streets. What is this? They do this. That dude that is in a little 5 points. He does these tarot cards. Is that what that is? Face reading, tarot cards, all this nonsense. Where does all this nonsense come from? It's all nonsense. Fertile brain, nothing. This fellow can tell you future. Look at his future. All this is nonsense. Tarot cards, all this. This actually is such a, how do you say that? What is real astrology, when these people try to imitate, it devalues actually the real science of astrology. These people have no idea what it takes to be an astrologer, what it takes to be someone who predicts the future, to understand what someone's nature is. They understand the piety it takes, the austerities it takes to come up to this level. It is not a joke. These people, all Atlanta, everyone that does all this crap is excuse me, my language, is fools, rascals, cheaters. They don't know this science. They'll tell you to please your ear, oh yes, you're actually such a compassionate person, and you like to help other people, and you become happy in your life. All you have to do is give me a few more dollars and I'll tell you more. And we're so foolish and full of ourselves, we think, oh yes, this is so nice. He's telling me such nice things. I'm such a great person. These tarot cards tell me I'm such a nice person. Blind leading the blind, fools. It's foolish. Because this knowledge is incomplete. All this knowledge is incomplete. They think, and then the same people that give you that advice, they go and engage in illicit sex and intoxication and doing all these things. This is complete nonsense. Anybody who claims to be a spiritual or a person who can see past mature nature, who can see the future. Trikalagya, right? That's the one who knows the past, present, and future. If he claims to know that, but he's drinking, smoking, has no idea of the principles, of base principles of human life, what to speak of spiritual life, one should not take that knowledge. If one takes it, then he's a fool also. Blind leading the blind. So this is going on in this material world. Cheating. But the devotee does not do that. What does he do? He simply passes the knowledge, that which is already perfect, and does not speculate. Maybe it's like this, maybe it's like that, maybe it's like that. No, it is like this. No, this is what it is. We do not want to become self-proclaimed gurus. Oh, I'm such a great person, you should listen to me. You should listen to what I have to say. That is not our philosophy. That is not the philosophy of perfect knowledge. There is nothing to be said. There's nothing more. Obviously, there is different. When one studies the literature properly, then he gives a proper explanation in an understandable way. But everything is there perfectly. You do not invent your own knowledge. You do not invent. You do not come up with. You do not add. You do not subtract. It is there. It is complete. It is an eternal process, which leads to an eternal goal. Don't think that you can change the process, then you'll change the goal. You've missed the whole thing because of your false ego, because of your foolishness. This human form of life is very short. Yes, we are suffering a lot in this life and in many lives, and experiencing some level of happiness and distress and all these things. But our own foolishness continues our material existence, birth after birth after birth, death, old age and disease. How many more? How many more lives do you want to live? Now you have attained this human form of life. Do it immediately. It is very rarely achieved. After so many millions of species of life, you have attained it. And not only have you attained it, but you have attained it at the perfect time of Lord Chaitanya's movement when it is going on. So the devotee, especially, this is so relatable to Srila Prabhupada. He knows the happiness and distresses of all living entities. So they take themselves out of what you would call their own comfortable situation, where you could happily they could sit in Vrindavan or any holy place and go back home, back to Godhead. They themselves make that endeavor to come and give the knowledge to these living entities. To us, the conditioned living entities. So Krishna describes this in the Bhagavad Gita. He describes the qualities of a devotee, and a specific quality that relates very closely here. All of them, but specific one. Sarvopakaraka. Neglecting one's selfish desires and working for the satisfaction of others is called paropakara. Whereas causing trouble to others for one's personal gratification is called parapakara. A devotee always works for the pleasure of Lord Krishna, who is the resting place of all living entities, and thus a devotee's activities are ultimately pleasing to everyone. Devotional service to Lord Krishna is the perfectional stage of welfare work, since Lord Krishna is the supreme controller of everyone's happiness and distress. Foolish persons, under the influence of false egotism, consider themselves to be the ultimate well-wishers of others, execute superficial materialistic activities rather than attending to the eternal happiness of others. Because the devotee remains pure and engaged in missionary activities, he is everyone's best friend. So he neglects his selfish desires. He works for the satisfactions of others. He works for the satisfaction of others. He does not care for his own happiness. He sees the living entities in their conditional nature, in their position. That is a Madhyama Adhikari. He goes out to distribute the knowledge of Krishna. He goes out, makes an effort under any difficult circumstances. He does not consider what is good and what is bad for himself, what is favorable and what is unfavorable. He goes and he preaches the message of Lord Chaitanya, the message of Krishna consciousness as it is. He does not self-proclaim himself to be the savior of all, but he directs that to Krishna, although he may be, like Srila Prabhupada, who he is. So, why does he do this? Because he understands that this is the true desire of everyone at heart. This is the real nature of every living entity. It is not some superficial thing, as Srila Prabhupada is saying here, as the commentary is saying here in the 11th canto. Foolish persons under the influence of false egotism consider themselves to be the ultimate well-wishers of others, executing superficial material activities. Everybody wants to be some great saint, some great philanthropist. But they're simply just saving the clothes. They're not saving the person. They're only saving the externals. Yes, I'll give you food today. Yes, I helped this person's eyes. Yes, I built a hospital for some persons so they can become glorified. But a devotee does not care about these things. He simply wants to help the living entity on the platform of the soul. And when he does that, he faces so much backlash, but he is tolerant. He is tolerant in his approach to giving knowledge to others. Just like Srila Prabhupada went through so many difficulties and in preaching Krishna consciousness, so many people did not accept his preaching. So many people were against him. But he did not care for that, even though personally he was attacked. He did not care for such things. Because ultimately it was done for Krishna. It is as Prabhupada states here, and because one is Krishna conscious, because one in Krishna consciousness is happy, he tries to distribute the knowledge of Krishna everywhere. Since the perfect yogi tries to broadcast the importance of becoming Krishna conscious, he is the best philanthropist in the world, and he is the dearest servitor of the Lord. In other words, a devotee of the Lord always looks to the welfare of all living entities, and in this way, he is factually the friend of everyone. He is the best yogi because he does not desire perfection in yoga for his personal benefit, but tries for others also. He does not envy his fellow living entities. Here is a contrast between a pure devotee of the Lord and a yogi interested only in his personal elevation. So if one wants real friendship, if one wants to experience real love, if one actually wants that which is the topmost desire of one's own life, everybody wants someone who's not going to cheat them, right? Nobody wants to go to a place and, yes, today I'm going here so I can be cheated. Every relationship we get into, we don't want to be cheated in. So this relationship with a pure devotee, in that relationship will not be cheated. That relationship with the spiritual master, who we have examined properly, who is in proper stance, proper understanding, proper behavior, proper knowledge, proper vichar, achar, and prachar. If we have that spiritual master, if we have such devotees who are pure at heart, then we have come to the platform of perfection, perfecting that desire. We do not need to worry that whatever in this material, backstabbers, those people that hang around for a little bit and then go away later. None of this. That we can be completely invested in those relationships with the devotees who are the friend of everyone, the relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in that relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in that servitor attitude, one starts to experience transcendental bliss. One starts to experience real happiness, not the flickering happiness of this material world. This material world, like I was speaking this morning, makes no sense. There's no happiness. It's distress. You go through so much to get a little bit. But in devotional service, because one is always connected to Krishna, there's always happiness. The happiness at every step. Every step is a dance and every word is a song. That is the nature of the spiritual world. That is the nature of spiritual life. So when one gets something that is very good, he desires to spread that to others. He desires to give happiness to others. Would you like to speak up here, Ty? Yeah? Yeah. So one desires to give knowledge to others. One wants to distribute that knowledge, because when one finds something so good, one wants others to also experience it. Not that he keeps it to himself. He is not selfish. Therefore, there is this book distribution. Therefore, there is the Harinam. Therefore, there is the Bhagavatam class, the Bhagavad Gita class, the Prasadam. All of these things are there to help others experience the blissful nature of devotional service. That which is very distant and far from this nature, the Dukhalayam Ashashvatam, the nature of this material world, which is just onslaught of material nature. So, a perfect yogi, he is in perfect realization, not when he goes to the forest, not when he becomes, yes, I can sit by myself and become completely satisfied. I don't need anyone around me. I'm perfect in myself. That is not a perfect yogi. That is not what is described. A perfect yogi is one who comes to a realization and then gives that realization unto others, desires to give that realization unto others. And that Krishna appreciates very, very much. Prabhupada comments that the devotees are more merciful than the Lord, that they go out to the conditioned living entities and they endeavor to the lowest of mankind to give them perfection. They desire to give them perfection. And when we were up in Prabhupada village, or this is said in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was debating with this Mayavadi, who's Prakasananda Saraswati? Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and he defeated him and later became a devotee, but actually it's later as a Gopinath Acharya, he desired within his heart that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya became a devotee. Lord Chaitanya said to him that the only reason he's become a devotee is because of your desire to make him a devotee. So the pure devotees, when they desire for the living entity to come into devotional service, when one attains the favor of a pure devotee, yasya prasadat bhagavat prasada, when one pleases the spiritual master, then the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pleased. So the perfect yogi, the devotee, within his heart, he desires all persons to become Krishna consciousness. And simply by his desire, his intense desire, he can change the whole world. It only requires one pure devotee, like Srila Prabhupada, to change the whole world. It doesn't, it requires a whole army, but that pure devotee creates that army. So we should desire to become a pure devotee. We should desire to change other people's lives. We should develop that intensely and become perfected in that. Please Krishna like that. Not to become glorified as a perfect devotee or a perfect yogi or such and such, but specifically to please Krishna. We do everything for Krishna. Just even perfection is for Krishna. Because in that state, we can give Krishna consciousness purely to others. That is our desire. We have no other desire. Our desire is one with the spiritual master. The desire of the spiritual master. And we have no other thing. Arana koriyo mane ash. And the desire of the spiritual master is to blaze this material world with Krishna consciousness, to spread it far and wide. So this book distribution is doing that, just like this marathon is coming up. We're doing that. We're intensifying that. We're going full surrender, no consideration of ourselves at all in the marathon. You get up, you chant your rounds, you take breakfast, and you get out the door, you come back, you take milk, and you pass out before you hit your pillow. There's no time to think about yourself. You start to actually experience, I say this every time, you start to actually experience what it's like not to be so bodily conscious all the time. What it feels like to constantly think about the welfare of others. And then in that state, you'll be surprised how well it can control your mind. How your Krishna consciousness grows so exponentially when you're always thinking for the desire of others, when thinking for the welfare of others. Krishna says that later in the Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada comments in that when one controls one's mind by thinking for the welfare of others always. So a pure devotee, a perfect yogi is perfect for that reason, that he always desires the perfection of others. He wants to see others happy, even if he himself has to become unhappy and undergo whatever that superficial suffering is of the body, of the mind. But he desires perfection for others. He desires to give Krishna consciousness to others. And when that is done, he relishes, as stated, that the servant experiences 10 million more times happiness than the master. So Krishna becomes pleased, and then we become pleased even more. We experience so much more happiness within the heart by seeing someone come to the platform of Krishna consciousness. So everyone can, when marathon is coming, and we're going out every day also, every week, we can try to be in this consciousness. This is the Krishna consciousness movement. It is not something that Prabhupada just put out. This is what Krishna is speaking. Sankirtan movement is what Krishna is speaking in this Bhagavad Gita. This is what it's all about. There's nothing more. As Bhrigupati Prabhu was pushing us on, you're doing it, you're doing the real thing. Prabhupada is happy, Prabhupada is pleased. Any Prabhupada disciple that sees the Krishna life mood and the way that they're going about it, they say it looks exactly like the 70s. What does that mean? Why do they feel like that? Because they felt like that because Prabhupada was present there. So that means Prabhupada is present right here. He's pleased with the activities of the devotees. He's pleased. So therefore, we will double it this marathon. Prabhupada said, double it every marathon, double it. Now you did good, double it. We did huge last year, but now we have to double it again. So Prabhupada is present there. Prabhupada is present here because the book distribution is going on strongly. The preaching is going on strongly. The philosophy, we're maintaining it as it is. We're keeping our desire in line with the Acarya. We're following the spiritual master, following the parampara, and that is the perfection. That is as Bhakti Vikas Maharaj gives this lecture, the pure devotees in the making. All the devotees here are pure devotees in the making. We're all unripe mangoes. Maybe not some of us. Some are already ripe mangoes, maybe. But myself, extremely unripe, but hanging on to the tree. That is our perfection. We're staying on the tree of devotional service, staying on the tree, staying in connection, in the line of Guru Parampara. So I'll end my class there. If there's any questions or comments, we've got about 6 minutes to. So any questions? Okay. What's your name, bro?
Hey, what's up? I'm Stan.
Stan, okay.
It's not really a question, just
Stan the man.
just a little bit. I think like the most important thing is that I feel is that is preached like through Krishna consciousness is the personal accountability. Like in the pursuit of being the perfect being. If that is something one wishes to attain, I feel like there are a few things that has to be understood. It's like one, you have to be able to discern between material happiness and like true happiness. Because material happiness is something you can attribute to something else. It's something that can either be within yourself or outside of yourself. Whereas true happiness, you're already endowed with it. That's the thing that we actually forget.
You have any questions? Because I want to make sure I get the questions. If we can come back to you if you have.
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Mataji's, any questions? Nothing? Okay. All right. Okay. So then, she's getting things ready while that goes on. Nothing else? Okay, everything's understood, everything's clear? Yeah. You have a comment? Okay. You answer.
Hare Krishna. You were speaking about these kind of like pseudo-spiritual things that people get interested in, like these tarot card readings. And I was thinking about going out on book distribution at these body, mind, and spirit conventions. And at these conventions, it's a little different because when you're just out on the street, you kind of stop someone and you talk to them, and then after that, they just go away and you probably never see them again. Versus at these conventions, you'll stop and you'll talk to someone, but you'll kind of see them throughout the day. And you'll present them Prabhupada's books, you know, the absolute truth, and they'll be like really into it, and they'll be like, yeah, I just got here. I'm gonna just
Make a loop. Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
be right back, right? And then like you'll like forget about them after like a couple hours, but then you'll be like walking around, going to like the bathroom or getting more books from the van, and then you'll see them at these like tarot card booths that cost like $100 for a reading, and you're just like, I presented you the absolute truth. Not only that, but it was cheaper.
Yeah.
Than this tarot card reading, and you're sitting there being told some vague stuff that someone just is explaining to you to make you feel better about yourself or to puff you up in some sort of way so they'll give you more money. And I was just like thinking about like the contrast that's really evident at these events, that the cheaters just want to be cheated.
Yeah, cheated. And they just want something cheap, because devotional service, real spiritual life requires work. It requires hard work. It's difficult to become detached. Tarot cards, people are going to tell, oh yeah, stop illicit sex, stop drinking, no more intoxication, and no more gambling. They'll be out of business. You have quickly, and then you have some. You have a question? You have a question or a comment? You have a question or a comment?
Haribo,
Hare Krishna.
considering the true meaning of the word tarot means royal path. So it's designed as a science to put you on the royal path to spiritual enlightenment.
But none of them do.
Instructional reference to what is supposed to be spiritual. As you said, they've taken it and corrupted it into something far, far away from what the actual application should be.
Right.
Because it is a divine science that's been put forth for man in a pictorial representation.
You have to see whether it is a divine science.
Right.
You have to see where it's coming from.
Right.
Who's making it? What's going on with it?
Right. And it says the picture on the card, as they say, a picture is worth, 1,000 words. So it's a picture representation, as is above, so is below. But they've taken it and corrupted it, and as you say, taken it and say, well, I'm just going to get as much money out of this as I possibly can. Say something as vague as I possibly can that's going to, interest a person who is ignorant.
Yeah.
As you say, you have the blind leading the blind.
Yeah.
But they do not, as you say, understand the true science.
Yeah. Yeah. Krishna Keshav, we have something?
There is in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, the cause of the distress of a living entity is forgetfulness of his relationship with God. That is a startling difference between Abrahamic religions and the Vedic culture. Satyam, it is true. Its bell is ringing. So, actually, when you speak to these people who read Bible or Quran, they just explain, or we know, they only say that it is God has sent us here to test or anything like that. Anyhow, Hare Krishna.
Which is Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Mitra